This is False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm your host, John Buhler, lead writer, fansided.com. As you can see, I'm flying solo like a cup and a place I'm taking up residency in for the time being. Yes, the Arizona State podcast and I are doing a hella ton of dog sitting in the lead up to Phoenix. Like we said on Monday's show, Cody is on vacation right now with his wife in Hawaii. We're going to be meeting up with Cody, or I'm going to be meeting up with Cody in Phoenix next week for our work conference, and we'll both be back on the show next Friday. So I'm doing a show today on Thursday, and I will be doing a show for the early part of next week's episode on Sunday for Monday. So I'm flying solo like a cup today, and then again on Sunday. So I don't want to beat around the bush too much. Let's get started with our first and 15 with we do more than shoot hoops and turn left. We also fire a head coach amid scandal. Yes, Stanford has decided to move on from its underperforming, malevolent head coach, Troy Taylor. Troy Taylor came over from Sacramento State 2 years ago to replace David Shaw. He has posted a back-to-back 3-9 seasons. Their only win of note that I can recall was them beating Syracuse last year, who went 9-3. Had the Orange beaten the Cardinal, that's crazy. Orange and Cardinal. Maybe Syracuse is a serious contender to make the playoff, but this isn't about performance. This is all about stuff going on behind the scenes. And apparently, there were two, or at least two, investigations into Troy Taylor and wondering like if he's actually running the program correctly. It kind of seemed like initially that he was kind of like mean and degrading to women, but I think probably the best way that I've heard it was he was just an asshole to everybody. Is probably the best way to describe it here. So, obviously with the ascension of Andrew Luck, the former Cardinals great quarterback, played for the Colts, in the NFL, my peer, a year younger than me, he decided as being promoted to general manager there at Stanford to go in a different direction. And basically, like, I know it's the end of March and everything, spring practice, but Stanford's become the most anonymous program in the Power Four. Along with Cal and I guess SMU, they went to the ACC in a region where like they don't really fit. We saw their athletic director, Bernard Muir, resign after 13 years, and he won something like 10 athletic directors cups, which I think maybe this kind of ties into it as well. I'm like, okay, maybe you're not doing so well on the football field or the men's basketball field, but you're winning in everything else. I don't know if there was a cover up or whatnot, but the point is, the Troy Taylor scandal is starting to kind of seem like what we dealt with regarding Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern a couple of years ago when David Braun got kind of promoted from within. And again, I don't know exactly what direction Stanford's going to go in terms of trying to figure out their next head coach. This kind of slipped under the radar. I wasn't like entirely. I kind of missed the boat on this yesterday, but my colleague Alicia De Artola Castillo brought to my attention that Stanford did in fact fire Troy Taylor. And I think Grant Hughes of Cardinal 247 outlined a handful of candidates to potentially replace Troy Taylor. Jason Garrett, the former Cowboys head coach, now does studio work and calls games for NBC. He was a finalist for the job that ultimately went to Taylor. This guy also had been a finalist for the Duke job that ultimately went to Mike Elko a few years ago. So, Jason Garrett, I believe, played his college football at Princeton, I think, somewhere Ivy League, maybe Columbia. But like, I think he could fit in the ethos and have the cachet with that they would need for Stanford. I think that would be a great hire if they decide to go in that direction. Cliff Kingsbury, the Washington Commanders offensive coordinator. Again, he had been the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals before, as well as at his alma mater of Texas Tech. I think in a way this could actually work because the ceiling is not going to be terribly high. This is a very innovative offensive mind, a guy who has kind of pivoted from just being an air raid to multifaceted guy. Now his quarterbacks thrive under him, whether that would be Patrick Mahomes, Johnny Manziel, Jaden Daniels, and Kyler Murray. I think that could be a boon for Stanford because anytime the Cardinals are good, they have a good quarterback play. They have good quarterbacks going. Bobby April III is the defensive coordinator on staff. He may be the guy they promote from within. It's kind of the same sort of thing we saw with what David Braun there in Northwestern. So this is an easy kind of way to fix this if they needed to go very quickly. Troy Taylor at Cal, not Troy Taylor, replaced the Troy Taylor with Troy Calhoun, Air Force coach. I mean, over the years, we've seen Calhoun be tied to several head coaching vacancies, whether that would be, Colorado, things in that region. Again, Air Force is a very difficult job, but that's also his alma mater, and he's done very well leading the Falcons. I do wonder, though, if like they're going to go with a more traditional offense. I do realize that he had been an offensive coordinator in the NFL before, I think, with the Houston Texans, before he went back to alma mater at Air Force. So maybe like it's just kind of like the triple option they run at Air Force, maybe more contingent on the type of players they have there at the Air Force Academy. But I'd be intrigued by that one as well. I think he'd be worthy of the opportunity. You also have Middle Tennessee head coach Derek Mason, the former star defensive coordinator on David Shaw, former head coach at Vanderbilt, former defensive coordinator for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I think he'd understand exactly what Stanford would need. That's another good one. Troy Walters, Cincinnati Bengals wide receivers coach. He did play at Stanford as a receiver. Again, another guy that's in house that I think could work. Davita Pritchard, another guy, Commanders quarterbacks coach. This is the guy who was a quarterback before Andrew Luck and them with with the Jim Harbaugh run. This is a guy this may be the reason like why Cliff Kingsbury's tied. I would venture to guess that like maybe he comes back to be the OC at alma mater, but another interesting candidate as well. Chris Peterson, former Washington head coach. Again, it also Boise State. It's got to be the right job. I think the game has changed a little bit. I don't think he's necessarily a big candidate, but again, you've got a handful of really high end, quality head coaching candidates here to potentially go to Stanford. This is a job that I didn't think anybody would want because of the difficulties of it. Academics, being able to get people on the team. Like Stanford's regularly the one program that doesn't fill out its roster with scholarships because not enough people can qualify. I mean, my high school friend in middle school, or my high school classmate, Chase Thomas, I played lacrosse with him and baseball with him. Yeah, he got to go to Stanford because I don't know, he was in honors classes and AP classes with me too. So like, I mean, you got to be pretty smart to go to that school. Like I could have probably gotten in, but I would have needed football to do that as well. But it's I guess really to tie a bow on this as best as I can regarding the decision to move on. I don't think that they were going to do it until like the news leak came out. And then once that happened and they realized that this is the second time, or this is not the first time they've been dealing with that with Taylor, that they would need to go in a different direction. I mean, this is a guy that had a lot of success there at Sacramento State prior to this. They thought it could work kind of going with the guy with a more like local NorCal kind of feel to it. Also, I think the fact that he was a Cal alum, I mean, maybe he sabotaged it. I mean, maybe I'm going through that right now with Terry Fontenot as the GM for the Atlanta Falcons, even though he's got very strong New Orleans ties, both from being in the Saints front office and playing at Tulane. But I this is interesting because this comes like right on the heels of the we talked about Andrew Luck being the GM at Stanford and Ron Rivera being the GM at Cal. In that situation, I was down on Andrew Luck because I didn't feel that he necessarily had the stones, the cojones, whatnot, the gumption to make tough moves. I kind of felt that like what hurt him is he was not he did not voice his opinion as strongly as he needed to in Indianapolis. Like Peyton Manning was a dick. Peyton Manning still probably is. He was very demanding and he basically elevated the Colts to a higher standard. They obviously haven't been the same team since he left. They had a few good years there with Luck as well, and obviously now they haven't made the playoffs or they haven't won the division in over a decade. So that's a little frustrating there for Indianapolis. But this is a tough move to do. Bernard Muir, I don't really recall who the new Stanford AD is. I'll probably figure that out as this develops once they hire somebody. But I would say though that like this is like the first tough move that like Andrew Luck had to do. And this kind of goes back to like I guess what happened when I mean not to say that it's the same thing, but when Adam Silver became the NBA commissioner over David Stern, he had to deal with the Donald Sterling situation. He basically had an oust a horrible racist owner of a team, and Steve Ballmer bought it, and obviously the Clippers and basketball is better for it. But That's not to say that Adam Silver is like no is a great uh, commissioner. He's kind of bad, I think, but like that was a good move, and that was the first tough test. And I think I still think high regards with him doing that. Maybe this is kind of what Luck has to do here in the general manager role. Again, I did find it interesting that he was kind of put front and center because again, the athletic director is either like they're looking for one or like it's just brand new. So most importantly, I would say with this, Stanford athletics needs to be united again. It doesn't need to be fractured. This is a team that when I was first getting into writing was really good under Jim Harbaugh and David Shaw. You have players like Andrew Luck, Toby Gerhart, Richard Sherman, Doug Baldwin, Shane Scove, Chase Thomas. I'm just the guy remembering dudes right now. Troy Murphy, Trent Murphy, Trader Troy Murphy. One of them played basketball. One of them played edge rusher for the Stanford. Jet Toner, the kicker. Yeah, another guy. Kevin Hogan. I'm missing somebody pretty substantial too. But oh yeah, Drew Dahlman, former friend of the Falcons program, Blog and Dirty, but now with the Bears. What I'm getting at is there's players that want to play there. There's guys who are very smart, intelligent that will fit exactly what they need to do. They got to get the right fit. They got to get a Stanford guy. I understand getting a guy who didn't play there may have been the right call for them at the time, but the more I think about it, I just kind of seem like the leap up was too good. I think right now you got to go in-house or somebody in the Stanford family. And if not, maybe you go with Kingsbury. You got to go with the guy who's seen some stuff and is going to come in here, is going to get the ground running because they're just not as equipped to compete in the ACC right now as much as Cal is. I mean, I know Justin Wilcox is kind of up against it, but I think Cal cares a little more. You can be good, but I think the problem with Stanford is like there's only so many high-end football players who are high-end athletes and academics as well. You know, like Duke's up, um, but like Vanderbilt's up, but Northwestern's down a little bit. Let's see who else is down. Whatever. Notre Dame's up, Michigan's up. Like there's only Wake Forest is down. There's only so many places where like you're recruiting like you're not recruiting everybody, you're recruiting people from the same sort of select pool. So not everybody can be good at the same time, but somebody can be good. It used to be Stanford, it isn't anymore. So I'm intrigued to see what potentially happens. But for now, Stanford's looking for a new head coach at the end of March, heading into April. Moving on to our second topic of the day, we are going to be going with "It Don't Mean Enough." Yes, Paul Finebaum sincerely doubts Billy Napier will have any staying power at Florida. He went on the Andy and Ari show on three, talking about Florida. And look, this is Andy Staples' his alma mater. He played for the football team. He was on the '96 national championship winning team. He lives in Gainesville. He's my personal hero in this profession in terms of writing. And obviously Ari Wasserman's a big influence on me as well. And obviously Paul Feinbaum's the best at what he's ever done. So these are three of the best people, three people I have a lot of respect for. But Paul Feinbaum does not have any respect for Billy Napier in Florida. I think I'm at a cross right now because like I appreciate what Napier in Florida did down the stretch last year to essentially, avoid stave off being fired and then, not only get to a bowl game, but win and win pretty convincingly over Tulane in the Gasparilla Bowl. But they have the toughest schedule in the country again. I mean, them and Oklahoma are the two toughest. Like, I think what was that with Bill Connolly's SP Plus rankings with strength of the schedule? Like, Florida's expected to win like 6.6 games. Oklahoma is expected to win like 6.3. An average top five team in the country would win like 75% of the games with the schedule the Gators and the Sooners have to go up against. So, really, the big point that Feinbaum was talking about is basically games 3 through 6 for Florida this season. So they start the year with Long Island University in South Florida. Okay, you should probably get wins over both of those teams. Then I believe you play. I may not have the order exact. I think you play LSU, you play Miami, Texas A&M in succession. And I think all but Texas are on the road. So you got to go to Coral Gables. You got to go to College Station. You got to go to Baton Rouge. And Paul Feinbaum is like straight up like, I don't think Billy Napier survives this. and then later on in the season, you got to play Georgia, you got to play Tennessee, you got to play Ole Miss. That could potentially be 7 losses there. So I wrote this down, and I'm like, okay, how many guaranteed wins does Florida have? And I said five. I think it's like when I say guaranteed, it's like I'd be shocked if they lost. So Long Island, South Florida, Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Florida State. I think Florida State's going to be more competitive, but not quite there. Yes, I'm drinking out of a Dr. Seuss mug, wearing a Greta Van Fleet shirt, and not my kitchen. This is false start, but and then they have two games where I'm like, I don't think they're going to win. Like, I don't think they're going to beat Texas, and then I think you could swap out either Georgia and Jacksonville or versus Tennessee. Either one. I feel like of those three games, like you're going to lose two because like what I have all three of those teams making the playoff. I mean, I have Texas as a lock, Georgia is borderline, Tennessee is certainly in the conversation. And then it's like I think where Ari Wasserman kind of had pushback on Paul Finebaum about this is like maybe you split those first four games, LSU, Miami, Texas, Texas A&M. And I think the ones that he kind of had the biggest reservation about was Miami and A&M. Like I think they've just been drinking the blue Kool-Aid there a little bit, thinking that DJ Lagway is going to be the savior for Florida. Maybe he is. Maybe he is that good. But Garrett Nussmeier might be the best quarterback in the SEC. He might be the number one overall pick in 26. He may go play for his dad's team in the New Orleans Saints. That'd be my nightmare, but I could see that. That'd be a good narrative for college and pro football. I could do that. I could get by with that professionally. Texas, everybody's kind of like, yeah, that's not happening. But then you look at Miami. Well, Carson Beck, if he's healthy, and this is also in Miami, he's played in a bunch of games. I think he's only lost 3 games in his career. Two of them in Alabama. One of them was in horrible conditions versus Ole Miss in the rain. And then A&M, people go back and forth on this. They've got the talent. I think they got the head coach. I like Marcel Reed a little bit more than other people at quarterback, but like I think we're all kind of in the boat of like A&M's a top 20, 25 team. We're not going to put them in the top 12 just yet. But what we're failing to realize is I don't even know if Florida is really in that is like, are they sure we're sure they're in that level? I mean, the strength of schedule says they're going to win 6 games. I think they might win closer to 7 or 8. I think, like I said, there's 5 games that could go either way for them. You got what let's say Tennessee, Ole Miss, LSU, Texas A&M, and Miami. I kind of feel that the LSU game may go the other direction. I think they have a little bit more going than Florida right now. I think you could get Ole Miss. I think you could get basically you could get Miami, you could get anybody else. So you're looking at a team that's realistically probably going to win 7 or 8 games. If they win 9 with that schedule, they got a very compelling chance of making the playoff. And again, I think you also have to remember where Finebaum went to school, which is Tennessee. Tennessee has, I think, the easiest, or like the second or third easiest, like one of the three easiest schedules in the SEC, along with Ole Miss and Missouri. And they get Georgia at home, which I think they'll beat Georgia and maybe get to Atlanta because of that. You don't lose to Arkansas, you beat Florida, and then you beat Alabama. I mean, that's a team that I'm like, I'm struggling to see a way where Tennessee doesn't win 10 games. Tennessee might win 11. They might get to Atlanta. If Nico Iamaleava steps up his game, then I mean, like we're looking at a guy who could be a Heisman contender like I thought he was going to be last year. And he was not. God, was I wrong there? But to really tie a bow on it with this, Paul Feinbaum always has hard hitting opinions when he goes in somebody else's show, not necessarily his own. He's a really good interviewer. He lets his interviewers talk. He lets the callers talk. He just tries to be like, a shepherd of that program. But he hasn't always been right of late, but he's the best in the business at this for a reason and for a very long time. The SEC is really difficult, and I think in a lot of instances, I'll finish with this. Like to go from like the bottom to the top in the SEC, it's not happening. I mean, Auburn did it, and like Auburn's done it a couple of times, but like it's a gradual progression. like in the Big Ten, because it's a soft middle, a soft tummy, like you can basically have an Indiana every year. Like South Carolina was near the bottom 2 years ago. They nearly made the playoff last year. I have them in as the fourth SEC team, probably as the 10th seed behind Texas, Georgia, and Tennessee. So I could see Florida being as good as what South Carolina was last year, but that's still not quite good enough to make the playoff. We gotta take this one day at a time. And the only way that Napier and Florida is going to do this is take it one game at a time. I'm very nervous about the game and the cocktail party at the end of October, early November. Don't know when it is. I know around the time of year it is. Maybe they get the best of Georgia, but Florida's got to do more than just like upset Ole Miss. And maybe I'm not as high on them as I thought I'd be, but Paul Finebaum is certainly down on them. Um, and if I asked Paul Finebaum a question, he would probably hope that it wouldn't be do Haas or do Haas. So we're going to do this. Do Haas or do Haas? Is Kirby Smart starting to lose complete control of the Georgia program? I'm gonna go do Haas two S's because it's when you're on top of the mountain, it's really difficult to stay up there, but like the fall back down is not as precipitous. Look, we've seen stuff about the driving. We've seen him suspend players. He suspended the aptly named Nitro Tuggle and Marcus. That's why I'm easily. We also saw him. I think he was talking to reporters. Maybe he even talked to Josh Pate. It seems as though like he's going about a very interesting recruiting tactic this offseason. He said that like we've got a very young team. We're coming up on 3 years removed since our last national championship. Not a lot of starting experience. I mean, you're losing guys like Carson Beck to the portal, Trevor Etienne to the draft, Malachi Starks, Michael Williams, Jalen Walker all to the draft. You're basically going with Gunnar Stockton, and you got a whole new class of receivers and whatnot. He basically said like a lot of the guys in the Georgia team don't really taking to coaching, like they don't want to be pushed hard, and that's a problem because look, if you are of that ilk, if you're that good of a player, either in state of Georgia or nationally, to get in and play for this team, to qualify academically for it, it's not a right to be here. It's a privilege. And that was kind of the similar thing that we dealt with Nick Saban at Alabama. It's like if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. There's plenty of other places out there that will have you, but if you need to be here, you need to be all in. This is also Kirby Smart's greatest strength. He's just a master manipulator and a motivator. He's the type of guy that will, tell somebody that somebody wrote an article about them saying they're going to go 7-5 and use that like, Michael Jordan making stuff up in his head to go 15-0 win the national championship. But you got to wonder like who the leaders are going to emerge on this team. And I think like, it's the disease of me, I think is what Pat Riley used to say, where like, if everybody wins and everybody kind of wants their own, but like you have to sacrifice for the greater good to win. That's why people always poach players in free agency in the NFL because like, okay, we can give you more money. We want a piece of that. This guy goes in a role that he's probably underqualified for, but the opportunity presents itself and you have to go financially. Georgia has a difficult schedule. It's a lot of the same stuff, but a lot of the tough games from a year ago are at home. You get Ole Miss at home, you get Alabama at home, you get Texas at home. You do have to go to Tennessee, which I think is the one game on the schedule. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work out in Georgia's favor. Then again, Kirby Smart has had Josh Heupel's number with his gimmicky offense, and as long as they play great defense behind him, then I think they'll have a shot. Um, but I think people are really just, people don't like Georgia. People are kind of like they don't like Georgia, they don't like Michigan, and so they're not going to like Ohio State like they didn't like Alabama. That's just the price of being a team that's won national championships. It happened to Clemson. It'll happen to everybody else who wins one. It'll happen to Texas if they win one too. Like don't be foolish there. Um, the fine line between being great and outstanding is even less than being going from good to great. But I think that like as long as Kirby Smart is able to recruit at a high level, as long as Georgia is able to win games at home, like walk out of bed and win a game at home, As long as they're able to win about 9 to 11 games during the season in this playoff format, they're going to be fine. There are down years in everybody's cycle. I mean, Nick Saban had a down year in 2010. I mean, that was also when Auburn had Cam Newton and took the SEC by storm. Like, but then again, like that's Nick Saban's standard. That was kind of Bobby Bowden's standard at Florida State. There's a reason why Ohio State's the only program in college football that's never been bad once. I mean, Georgia had a down period in the 90s, but also Florida rose to prominence. Tennessee was really good. And there's just not enough space there at a, what, 10, 12 team SEC at that point. Um, I guess to really get my head around this regarding like if he's losing control, I think just the circumstances with it being in Athens, with it being the number one party school in the country, with it being the flagship university in the state of the biggest city in the Southeast, the fact it's a football power, there's just a lot, there's just the world of NIL. I don't think that that's helping in some capacities, but you're not going to be able to run this thing like a military academy anymore. I don't think you're going to be able to do that really anywhere. I mean, you could try if you get really insular, like you do at Clemson, or if you're actually at a military academy, but you're hurting yourself by not using the transfer portal. And you're bringing in guys who didn't work or didn't want to be another program. They come into yours. You have to be aware of that. Like every person you add to your program, every person you subtract creates a different program. It's like when I was doing Greek life at Georgia, my dad, who's in a fraternity at upstate New York, back in the day, said like your chapter changes with every pledge class that comes in, everyone that graduates. If you think it's going to be the same all 4 years, you're sorely mistaken. If the chapter stays like close enough to what it is, then you're good. But if you're seeing any major like up and down with it all, kind of like our political climate here in the United States of America, you're gonna be in for a rough time. But I mean, since Kirby's been at Georgia, outside of his first year there in 2016, we would have made the playoff every year. We made it in 17, we made it in 21, 22, and then 24, 18, 19, 20, and 23. Like if it would have been 12 team, we would have made it because we played in the New Year's Six Bowl every single time. So I'm not as worried about this as other people might. I think this is just really peak offseason content, but like you'll know pretty quickly if guys are ready to play. And if they're losing that grip, that tenacity, the willingness to go out there and compete and just get their hands dirty, then I think we might have a problem because it's not necessarily that there's somebody else in the SEC who's going to be able to sustain what you are to this degree. There's other teams out there that I think, like in the Big Ten, like Ohio State can match you toe for toe. Oregon might be able to get you on its best day. Notre Dame got you when you were down. Penn State is going to be really good this year. And if they're favored over us, that may not be a good look for us because James Franklin wins games his team is favored in. Does not beat teams that are ranked in the top five and does not win as an underdog, but he wins when he's favored. The ultimate front runner, just like Cam Newton. But it's not the end of the world for Georgia, but like Kirby's got to find like another way to motivate his guys. And because if he can't, then you got to find not if not find somebody who doesn't, but like you gotta rethink how you're going about the recruiting process and everything like that. You got to adapt because let's be real, Kirby has won two national championships at his alma mater. He's here because he doesn't want to be here anymore. And I don't know how much longer he's going to be coaching. I don't think he's going to be coaching into his deep into his 60s. I think he's going to, this job takes a lot on him. I think he's in his late 40s now. We're looking at him probably coaching here for maybe another decade or so, if that. So 20-year run, that would be great. And you go down as the greatest head coach in Georgia history, maybe in college football history, if you can eclipse Saban. He's got a longer runway than Saban did, but he's got to figure this out here pretty soon because people are getting a little impatient. Okay. Halfway through the show, we're moving on to our next topic. That's my quarterback. Excuse me. Yes, I wrote about this for fanside.com yesterday. As I was intrigued, we got spring practice coming up, and I was looking at some of the biggest quarterback battles in the country this year. Obviously, we know about the ones going on at Alabama and Ohio State, most notably. There's also ones brewing at other schools, such as like Michigan and Notre Dame. But surprised to see that Georgia wasn't on there. Again, I'm kind of basically taking my spin on an article I saw that Chip Patterson wrote for CBS Sports, and he outlined 7 programs in the Power Five that Power Four that have quarterback battles this spring: Alabama, Colorado, Maryland, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Oregon. So, and again, like the reason I do this, with my fingers on the show, is like I can see myself and I can enumerate because I don't want to be like and I do that enough anyway. But I kind of went through and looked at each of the battles, and I picked a guy to come out on top. And I spent a little time on this, but who cares? It's the off season. This is gonna be fun. So just as this is where my head's at the very end of March, heading into April. And again, I'm not expecting to see resolution with any of these 7 teams up until the start of the season, but just like kind of where my head's at. So I want to start with Alabama. They have a 3-man quarterback battle between Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, and Keelan Russell. I've talked to you about this before. This is the one that intrigues me the most. Ty Simpson's a former 5-star. His dad's the head coach at UT Martin. Has been with the program the longest. Has not been able to, wasn't able to beat out Jalen Milroe. But if he wins, it would kind of mean like this is a win for the Alabama program. There's like a loyal component to it. There's also some level of, I don't know, like there's also going to be like a relatively low ceiling with that because like if he doesn't win, he probably needs to transfer. Then you got Austin Mack, a guy who probably knows Ryan Grubb's system the best because he briefly played for him at Washington. He transferred with DeBoer to Alabama from Washington as soon as DeBoer got hired last year. So he's been with DeBoer for 3 years. He's bigger. I think he's 6'6", more athletic. Certainly checks the physical component box of what you need to do here. But like also, again, he wasn't an Alabama guy. He came in here, and my biggest concern with Kalen DeBoer is if he thinks he can win with Washington kind of guys to Alabama, he's not going to have that job very long. Washington kind of guys are different than Alabama guys. Alabama guys are 5 stars. Go get 5 stars. And that leads me to Keelan Russell, who is the 5-star coming up, a guy who was ecstatic to see Ryan Grubb come back and be the OC for Alabama after spending a year, an additional year in Seattle being the Seahawks OC. The way that I look at this battle is in time, it's probably going to be Russell, but like it's a tough choice because I don't think it's going to be him just yet. And I would say it's probably going to be Mac because I think he provides a greater level of upside. And I think DeBoer needs to kind of show like, okay, I've got control of this program. We're going to win. I'm the right guy here. And this is a way to validate that. If it is Simpson, he struggles. That could be a challenging part for DeBoer here. So I'm leaning Austin Mack, but like I don't think it's by much. Moving on to Colorado, you have one brewing that I didn't realize. You have Julian Lewis, 5-star freshman from nearby in Carrollton, Georgia. And then you've got Caden Salter, the Liberty transfer, coming over after being playing for Jamie Chadwell at the Flames the previous few years. Um, this is a guy to replace Shedeur Sanders. Look, I think it all comes down to who gets the better grasp of Pat Shurmur's offense. This is a guy who's been a successful offensive coordinator both in the college and pro level. Deion Sanders clearly has a lot of respect for him. I would argue that, like with this one, I think you got to go with Salter until Lewis is ready. And I think with Salter, because he's played a lot of big games at Liberty, that's going to allow Colorado its best opportunity to stay bowl eligible. He went around 6, 7, 8 games in a transitional year for the program. With Lewis, maybe you do eventually get there, but like Colorado needs bowl game practices. They got to continue to build. They can't just be a flash in the pan last year because they were terrible. Their first year at Colorado, that can't be the peak, and it can't come down that far. It's going to come down a little bit, but don't let it ruin you. So I'm going with Caden Salter there. Moving on to one that I didn't really realize was a battle. That would be with Maryland. And look, this is not one that like I'm super fascinated by. Uh, it's got you got to deal with Billy Edwards Jr. transferring, and he's going to Wisconsin. He's the guy that replaced Talia Tungavailoa um, in College Park, and I think Mike Locksley knows quarterbacks. He knows offense. His teams can't play defense, and they can't really play in the cold. I'm honestly shocked that Mike Locksley is still the head coach of Maryland. So it's going to be between Justin Martin, the transfer coming in from UCLA, and the local product Malik Washington. And this is as simple as I can do it. This the Maryland needs to make a bowl game, or else Mike Locksley's gone. And I think if it's close, you have to go with Malik Washington, the younger guy, because like this is local. You could probably draw that up. You can make that work in your favor. I think you also got to go down with, you got to go with your guys. You got to go down swinging with your guys. And I'm not expecting Maryland to do much. I think they're going to be a bottom four team in the Big Ten, along with Purdue. Who else is going to be really bad? I don't think Wisconsin's going to be very good either. We'll see what happens, but like go with the younger guy here because I think the upside component here is more important than like just trying to sustain it because you got to do something. You got to find something like you did with Talia Tagovailoa. Even though he did briefly play at Alabama, he transferred into Maryland. Great player for the Terps. Moving down to Michigan, you've got three-guy race between Jaden Davis, Mikey Keene, and Bryce Underwood. Look, I don't need to spend a lot of time on this. I think it's very obvious. Yeah, it's got to be Bryce Underwood because I didn't know who the other two guys were. This is the top recruit in the country. This previous cycle, you got him. Needs to be Sharon Moore needs to prove to us that this is his team and not Jim Harbaugh's team anymore that he's babysitting for. Like he needs to go out there and prove that he's worthy and deserving of being a Power Four head coach at a place like Michigan. This is Michigan. Figure it out. We wasted a lot of time last year with Alex Orgy and Davis Ward. It was dreadful. Couldn't throw the ball. This is an offensive coordinator being head coach. Yes, he's more of a run-based guy as a former lineman himself, but like, go with the 5-star like you had go with the 5-star Underwood, like the 5-star you had in JJ McCarthy, and just be done with it. I think the longer they delay him starting, the worse off it's going to be for Michigan. Take your lumps this year. This is a guy that I think can get you back to the playoff in 26. Moving down to, I think of the last three, you got Notre Dame here. Steve Angeli, CJ Carr, and Kenny Minchie. So Steve Angeli has been with the program the longest. He's played for three different offensive coordinators. Maybe what? I don't even know. Maybe Tommy Rees, Jared Parker, and then now Mike Denbrock. He backed up Sam Hartman 2 years ago. He backed up Riley Leonard last year. Jersey guy, very much a precision passer out of the pocket. I liked what I saw out of him in the playoff. I forget what team they were playing. They were up big. Maybe when Leonard was hurt. I think it might have been against Penn State. Now that I think about it, but really high on him. I also recognize that CJ Carr is the grandson of Michigan iconic head coach Lloyd Carr. And then Kenny Minchie is a guy that like supposedly has a lot of upside, could really spin it, very athletic. And I'm just going to say it this way. I didn't know about Minchie until now, so I really don't think he's going to be much of a candidate for it. I'm going to go with Steve Angeli. If Angeli gets it, then I think Carr may have to transfer because maybe he's just coasting on his last name. And I think Angeli is pretty good. I think he might be a better fit in Mike Denbrock's offense than even Riley Leonard, who I think came over when it was Jared Parker before he left to go take over Troy. So maybe the fit wasn't always great there. But yeah, I think Steve Angeli, I think Marcus Freeman's got a lot of trust in him. I'd go in that direction. Now the one you've all been waiting for, Ohio State. Three-guy race here for the Buckeyes with Lincoln Kineholtz, Julian Sant, and Tavian St. Clair. Tavian St. Clair is the up-and-coming recruit from just down the road. Julian Sand's from Carlsbad, California. Briefly was at Alabama. 5-star guy here. Lincoln Kineholtz has been with the program the longest. He was mostly the backup last year to Will Howard from South Dakota, knows the system the best. I guess St. Clair has a little bit more of a chance of doing this than I would expect. I think Ryan Day wants to see how good he can be. I don't think he's ready. I really think it's going to come down to Kineholtz and Sand. Let me put it this way. If it's close, I think it's going to be Sand because the high end is just greater than what he has with Kineholtz. But the longer it goes on, then I think it's got to be Kineholtz because Sand's not beating him out. Like talent should prevail over good coaching and discipline and other traits that I think people can just naturally can just do on their own, whereas opposed to like there's like a gift, if you will. And I guess like this is probably a really good time for me to explain my methodology with this. Like when you've got a quarterback race, two or three guys in college, again, where the money's not really an issue here. It doesn't really matter if you're paying NIL or whatever, because back in the day it didn't matter. I'm not really going to use my brain to think about that. But I would say with Keinholz, when you've got a player like Keinholz who's been there for a while and you trust him, there may be a low ceiling, but the floor is pretty high. When you got a guy who's a mega talent like saying maybe like, okay, the ceiling's up here, but the floor maybe down here, there could be a lot of variance. And ultimately, I think when you have a team that's really talented across the board, where there's not a lot of holes, you can afford putting being riskier at quarterback. And Ohio State should have that, but they lost a lot of guys, so it may be closer than you think. I did end up going with San because I think when you go out of the tunnel the first week and you got to play Texas early, you're trying to like repeat as national champions. Say gives you your best chance of doing that. They kind of holds again. Ohio State's never repeated as national champions in my lifetime. They've won it three times. The first two times in 2002 and 2014, they did not repeat. So keep that in mind. And then finally, Oregon. The one here is between Dante Moore, the former UCLA quarterback, and Austin Novosad, who's been on the team for a while. Also does track apparently. I think it's got to be Dante Moore because it's the same sort of thing. Like if it's not Moore, that's a really bad look. Again, Nova said maybe the guy who's been with the program the longest, actually recruited to actually, initially signed and agreed to play here and didn't transfer in. But like you got Moore in the same year that you got Dylan Gabriel to replace Dylan Gabriel to replace Bo Nix. A lot of quarterback turnover there in Eugene. Maybe Novosad provides level of stability there, but I do think Oregon pulls back a little bit. But like with more, like I feel if you put more out there, the chances of you making the playoff are very, very good. Whereas if it's Novosad, then they're just good. So it's not the worst decision spot to be in with Oregon. Again, it's like Ohio State, where you're probably going to make the playoff anyway. It's not going to ruin you, but like, what's your ceiling versus what's your floor? So just to recap this off the top of my recap this real quick before we move on. The seven quarterback battles. So at Alabama, I've got Austin Mack beating out Keelan Russell and Ty Simpson. At Colorado, I have Caden Salter beating out Julian Lewis. At Maryland, I have Malik Washington beating out Justin Martin. At Michigan, I have Bryce Underwood beating out Jaden Davis and Mikey Kane. At Notre Dame, I have Steve Angeli beating out CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey. At Ohio State, I have Julian Sain beating out Lincoln Kineholtz and Tavian St. Clair. And at Oregon, I have Dante Moore beating out Austin Novosad. Okay. So, we've gone through that's my quarterback, and we're now going to be coming to you live from Air Cracker's Couch. I think Cam Ward set the bar unfairly high for Carson Beck this year. He's been talking a lot. Again, I'm not a big fan of Cam Ward as number one pick. I think he puts his foot in his mouth a lot. We've also had a lot of guys with very interesting personalities go in the first round before. A lot of people are giving a lot of flack to Shedeur Sanders. Cam Ward, I don't know how that's going to work in Nashville, but he basically said, like, as pro day, like Carson Beck just needs to be himself, but he also needs to throw for 3,000 yards and 30 touchdowns and a bunch of other things. Like, it's all over the place here, and maybe Cam Ward has the pathway to get to the Heisman ceremony. I mean, he was the ACC Player of the Year for a team that didn't make the playoff. And I don't think you need to be condescending or talking down to Beck. I mean, Beck started for 2 years for a better program, a team that's lost a combined four games the two previous years. A guy who's been on national championship winning teams. Yes, I understand that like his life's in a bit of turmoil. He's dealing with an elbow injury, transfers from Georgia to Miami to be with his girlfriend, gets his car stolen, and she breaks up with him later for infidelity. Please delete Snapchat guy. Um, but the bar is insanely high for Carson Beck. And I think that like could he be a Heisman finalist? Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. I mean, he's a guy that like he said his dream was to win the Heisman Trophy. He didn't do it at Georgia. I think the talent around him let him down a little bit. on the offensive side of the ball, but you got to ask yourself, like, who's going to be going to the Heisman ceremony? Let's just say, I don't know, pick whoever you think is going to be. I'm not going to say Arch Manning. I got to see him play. Um, let's say Lenore Sellers. Let's say Garrett Nussmeier going. Those are two guys that I'm very high on as well. Over in the Big Ten side of things, let's put Jeremiah Smith in there at wide receiver. And then you're looking at the ACC. Is it going to be Klubnik or is it going to be Beck? And then if you look over in the Big 12, I mean, you're asking yourself, like, is Sam Levitt going to step up? Um, there's also a guy that usually comes out of nowhere that does this. I think Miami has the offense with Shannon Dawson to potentially do this. I think Miami is the one team this year that I think is all over the place. I think there's a chance that like they could win 10 games. They could also win five. I have them started out ranked like somewhere in the low 20s, high teens. I wouldn't be shocked to start out the year with them being closer to like trying to think of the word is like 13, like being at the Alabama BYU range. But it's all contingent on Beck's health and if he can really play. Again, he messed up his elbow pretty bad in the SEC championship game. Couldn't really throw. His Georgia career ended on a handoff to win the SEC championship over Texas. Uh, People are going to have thoughts about him if him being a damn good dog in the end, but like he did more good for us than bad. I think it just the breakup's still a little bit fresh here in the Classic City and within Dog Nation. But look, with Ward saying like putting all this stuff on the pedestal, I think that like it makes me like Ward even less. And I think with Beck, like you get what you get with him. You know, there's going to be a lot of dumb stuff. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's great. You got to take the good with the bad here. I think Beck being in the college for a sixth year, if he just focuses in on football, yeah, maybe he could do it. I mean, he could be what the third Heisman winner out of Miami behind Vinny Testaverde and trying to think what else is his name. Gino Torretta. Yeah, should have won that one. Yeah, that should have gone to either Garrison Hurst or probably Marshall Faulk. But yeah, I just kind of feel with Ward putting so much pressure on Beck at this point, it's kind of unfair. It may be justified, but like I don't think for the most part that you're really doing much of a service to the guy replacing you. Let him be himself, and then you go out there and you completely like say exactly the exact opposite of what you initially tried to say with the situation. Look, I think the best thing that needs to happen is in a month, we're going to see Cam Ward go number one to the Titans. Hopefully, he buys into a lot of what's going on with what's his name? Brian Callahan as the head coach. Titans are really screwy, but like Cam Ward's played at Incarnate Word, he's played at Washington State, he's played at Miami. Not exactly three bastions of college football at this moment, but like I'm shorting him. I don't think he's going to be as good as everybody else says. I kind of like Short Sanders a lot more, and I'm intrigued by Jackson Dart. But then again, you know, I was all in on Carson Beck this time a year ago, thinking he's going to be the number one pick to like the Cleveland Browns or something. And he's coming back to college for not only a sixth year, but playing for a different program. So I'm not ruling out Beck getting to the Heisman ceremony, but I'm also he's got to be himself. And I think that there's other better potential candidates out there to do it beyond Beck this year. I would say, like I said, Sellers, Nussmeyers, and Jeremiah Smith, I feel pretty good about getting there. I honestly like Klubnik a lot more out of Clemson, but that's neither here nor there. And then we're going to move on to our final topic of the show with some I'm Trying Jennifer, another transfer quarterback coming into an ACC school from another ACC school. Thomas Castellanos says he sees himself a lot in Jameis Winston coming over. Jameis Winston is one of the all-time greatest players at Florida State, but he's also a very quirky, interesting dude. There's a reason why his NFL career did not pan out like we all thought it was going to be, being the number one pick out of Florida State, going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think he's about to be on what, like his fourth team now. He played for the Bucks. He's played for the Saints. He's played for the Browns. Now he's on the Giants. He's not a serious groundhog. Super fun guy. I feel like a guy I would want to have on my team. Maybe Castellanos is that too. I think it's cool that he's reuniting with Gus Malzahn there in Tallahassee. That was his head coach at UCF when he briefly played there. Then he went to he went to Boston College, played for Jeff Hafley, and then he played for Bill O'Brien for a year before transferring. Again, this is a guy who's about to play for his fourth head coach with now Mike Norvell. So playing for some pretty interesting names as well. But you got remember Jameis Winston only played for Jimbo Fisher in college, and he's basically Jimbo Fisher made a lot of money based off of Jameis Winston's back. And honestly, like if Florida State were to like flip the script and go from going 2-10 to 10-2, and Castellanos is the reason for that, uh, I would be ecstatic for him. Super fun player, got a lot of things going for him. Dog may have just grabbed a towel, but that's okay. We'll deal with that here momentarily. But anyway, Jameis Winston, I think we look at it from the perspective of like it's a different kind of role model here. Maybe he's the ideal role model for being a great college player or having a staying power of the NFL, but not being a great quarterback in the NFL, and maybe not having the best sense of judgment there in college football. Again, this is a guy that had some scandals going on, stole some crab legs, yelled something profane at a student union. But he also had a lot of his play. He also pitched for the Seminoles too. Could have gone pro in baseball as well as a closer of some sort of type. But I don't know. You also have to remember where you also have to remember what part of Georgia that Thomas Castellanos grew up in. He's from Waycross, Ware County, so he's kind of down there in South Georgia, relatively near Florida State. Honestly, like Waycross is not that far away from where Stetson Bennett grew up in Blackshear, Georgia, but like the southern part of the state, there's a lot of people there, particularly over there in Albany, that root for Florida State a little bit more than Georgia. Again, you get around the border of anywhere in Georgia, you've got fans of other teams. Columbus, that's a very much an Auburn hub. You get up there kind of by like Carrollton and stuff like that. That can be a little more Alabama. Obviously, Clemson's kind of up there by Commerce. Tennessee up there by Chattanooga. Obviously, Georgia Tech's in Atlanta. You get down there by St. Simon's. That's a very Florida heavy area as well. But and then South Carolina, I guess you would probably say that would be Augusta, if you will. But yeah, there's a bunch of different areas where people pull from with Georgia that don't just necessarily pull from the dogs. But look, Florida State had a terrible year last year, the worst I've ever seen. Mike Norvell's had a few, but this was the worst. You bring in Gus Malzahn, you completely revamp this thing. You bring in a quarterback who I think can actually play in the ACC. The guy who beat you last year, Thomas Castellanos, over just the confused mongoloid oaf out there in DJU. That also makes me kind of nervous about Nico Iamaleava. I'm like he's got some DJU in him, and I can't unsee it. But Castellanos certainly intrigues me. Again, I don't think he plays anything like Jameis Winston at all at quarterback. I think he's kind of more a little shiftier. Again, he's kind of like the Joe Burrow, Tony Romo, Joe Montana, Deshaun Watson kind of guy. That's how he plays a little bit. Cam Ward's in there too. So again, if you have success in the ACC and you play like that, you can win ACC Player of the Year. You can get to the Heisman ceremony, but you got to win more games to win the Heisman. Kenny Pickett didn't do that at Pitt. We didn't. No Clemson players ever won the Heisman. You got to win. You got to win it all like Jameis Winston did to essentially be in that level. Could he be the fourth Heisman quarterback to come out of Florida State? I'm doubting it, but like Chris Winkie, I mean, he was like 30 when he was playing there. Charlie Ward, a little bit before I remember. I mean, he ended up playing basketball for the Knicks. And obviously Jameis Winston, still the NFL a decade later. I think like Florida State has the resources and the ability to achieve everything that they want on the football field, but like baby steps. You're not going to go from like 13-0 to 2-10 to 13-0 again. Like you're gonna probably win about like 6 or 7 games to get back to being a bowl team, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, this was episode 162 of False Start. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X at Buhler118. You can follow my absent-minded, absent co-host, Cody Williams, at the Sizzle20. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. Yes, we got a few new subscribers that showed up here. Once I edit this, and if your name shows up here, I'll give you a shout out on a Sunday show. But yeah, I appreciate the love here. We're really trying to grow this thing. We're coming up on It's episode 162, but like we're in the 80s right now for ones on video. We're really, really, really excited about that. We're gonna probably do something really fun here at 100. Again, I'm doing the show solo like a cup on Sunday, and then next Friday, Cody and I will both be back. We're gonna be doing some JLN, and we're also gonna be talking with some Antonio. We have no idea. We have an idea where we're going with Antonio, but we have no idea what we're gonna do for a JLN. So it's gonna be absolutely wild. Once again, thanks for listening, and this is False Start.